At Honda, we know young people love new words, so we made one up too, Summerbration. And it is tight, just like the 2017 Fit at 0.9% APR. So hurry into your local dealer for the Honda Summerbration sales event from KBB.com's best value brand.
Visit your Metro Milwaukee Honda dealer today during the Honda Summerbration sales event.
Based on 2017 Brand Image Awards from Kelley Blue Book, visit KBB.com for information. APR financing offers available for well-qualified buyers. See dealer for financing details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and I am most privileged and honored this evening to have Michelle Houchens, a.k.a. the Mile High Medium, on our show for this evening. She has a number of abilities and talents. I'm so overwhelmed and amazed by her abilities. She's actually on hold at the moment, so we're going to get right to our interview with Michelle. So just one second. Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening,
Hello?
Cindy.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm well. Namaste.
Everything okay?
Everything is great.
First time I started an interview like that, so I need to make sure my guest is all right. Nothing's happening there that doesn't need to be, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Namaste, Cindy. Namaste to all the listeners.
Okay. Wonderful. I'm so honored and so happy that we finally got a chance to get this on air, obviously. We tried this one other time before, so now I'm kind of getting caught up. You and two other guests actually ended up getting postponed, so I'm so very excited that you're on the show. I was so hoping to get you for Halloween, but I didn't, so that was kind of a bummer. But I'm glad that you're here nonetheless, because not only is she talented, but she's absolutely beautiful. She has about 85,000 skills to her repertoire. I mean, I've looked at this, and we're going to get into all this, of course. I kind of wanted to start off maybe delving into your self-discovery of possessing your intuitive skills. I'm ascertaining based on the research I've done, that was approximately age 5. If you could kind of delve into that and just explain to our listeners how all of this started. How did you get into all of this?
Yeah, Cindy, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. How did I was born into it.
Wow.
And you don't know what you don't know. It's funny. And I'm sure so many of the listeners, I'm told, can relate to this. I have my birthday's the day after Christmas, and people will come up to me and say, oh, you must get ripped off on your birthday because you're the day after Christmas. And I say, I've never known anything different. I don't know. Maybe I do. But it's funny when you're born with intuitive gifts, which I believe everyone on the planet Earth possesses intuitive gifts, just like animals, plants, human beings, that we're all interrelating to this higher power, something I call source creator, and that when we are able to tap into that of our innate being, just in this authentic state, that we seem to know, feel, listen, hear more than we think we do. And many people see. I forgot the seeing. That's a very important state. So when I was 5, I would walk into a room and I would hear thoughts and feel feelings of other people. I was a very sensitive child. I didn't like it, Cindy. It's interesting. Probably like a lot of people out there, I didn't like being so what we term as empathetic. That, I could cry at the drop of a dime when, an animal got hurt or someone got hurt or someone was hurtful to someone else. I would think, gosh, why are they being so mean? So anyway, as I grew up, what I learned to do was put a damper on this, almost like a dimmer switch. And by the time I got to my teens, it was so overwhelming to hear some of the thoughts of human beings, both the positive and the negative, that I tended to dim it way down. And then as I was getting into the corporate world, I found that, it was helpful to, brighten it up a little bit and use some of these intuitive gifts as I stayed, a little behind the scenes in my own private world, because I was in the corporate world in Western medicine and implantable pacemakers and defibrillators. And, in modern science, many people say, the whole aspect to intuition. Why would we ever use that? Yet it's so funny, Cindy. That's what medicine really is. It's a very subjective skill that every day we're putting heart catheters and things into people, and we're using our subjective abilities, which I call intuition. Now, intuition isn't always subjective. It's actually pretty darn accurate. and it's a frequency, it's a vibration, and that's what I pick up. So I started out as a clairsentient. I'm now a clairvisual and a clairaudient, or clairvoyant, as people would say, clairvisual, clairvoyant, and clairaudient. I use my clairaudient skills quite a bit, so I can hear conversation just like you and I.
I've gotcha. Okay. Now, I found it rather interesting, which I know that a lot of this audience doesn't know this, that you had made a conscious choice, basically from age 5 till about 40-plus years, to just keep a silence as it pertained to your psychic ability. And why did you opt to go that route?
Yeah, like I said, Cindy, I really, I had friends who are intuitive psychics, I think some of the best in the world that I've ever met. And, it was just something that my career led me off into Western medicine, and I never thought that I would come out to the public with these skills, but I was never, completely hidden about them, but it's not something that's well accepted in, like I said, in modern science and Western medicine. So I just stayed pretty quiet about them. But, people always refer, boy, you're pretty intuitive, you're pretty knowing. The staff that I ran, I had a pretty large staff. They'd look at me during review time and say, how did you know that? And I would just laugh and say, well, I know you. And that's something that I believe that we know each other. But, yeah, I have these extra gifts. And I finally came out to the world as I was told it was my time to utilize this gift in a professional standpoint and give back to the world and teach people how to tap into these intuitive senses and to our innate being. So that's what I do now. Besides, as a private practice, I do readings. I also work with people. I'm inclusive of kids, teenagers who have these extra intuitive gifts of how to use them and terrain in this world we call the earth with them. Because sometimes it's a little overwhelming when you have these extra senses.
Well, I imagine so, definitely. I mean, and it's a funny story to mention this because all the listeners that usually watch my show on a regular basis will tell you, I'm a bipolar person. I've been a long-standing bipolar person for 20-some-odd years, and so my feeling's always been you can't top Cindy because there's just so much going on in his brain all the time. So it almost seems like Michelle might be able to top that, actually, because there's like stuff going on in his head 24/7. There's just so much crammed in here with a bipolar person. It's amazing how powerful your brain truly, amazingly is, and how much control it truly can have over you. So I just find that completely and utterly fascinating, actually. I want to kind of delve into some of the different, I'm certain, again, that people don't know or understand maybe some of the things that you're into or what you've done in the past. You obviously went on to pursue a bachelor's degree in nursing, and I know that you've been a surgical ICU nurse dealing with post-op heart surgery patients. In those moments, I'm guessing you became familiarized with what we call quantum healing. Now, I'm certain that the audience isn't really familiar with that. Can you kind of explain to them how you utilize that technique? Because I understand you utilize that without the concept of touch. Is that correct?
I do now.
Okay.
Yeah. This was back in the 1980s, believe it or not, and I love this because I was working in a post-open heart unit, a surgical ICU in the Detroit area, and we had a very gifted nurse who started to move energy on patients, literally touchless energy, and she would just put her hands, probably about less than 12 inches from the body, and start to move energy. Well, back in the 1980s, this was about the mid-80s, people would look at you and say, okay, are you nuts? Like, what do you mean? What are you doing? You're not even touching the patient, better yet, because back then, massage, acupuncture, all of that, believe it or not, just in 1985, 86, it was a very different practice. So she was moving energy in a touchless fashion called quantum healing without touching the patient. And what we observed was patients would get out of the ICU faster, heart rates would go down, blood pressures would go down, and these patients were literally leaving the ICU faster. So it was tough for the surgeons, anesthesiologists to really, quibble about that, but nobody really understood how it worked. Well, now we're to the place of, quantum mechanics or quantum physics where we really understand that we are a bunch of atoms vibrating. And these, a bunch of atoms vibrating means we have an electrical charge. And, many people look at the human body as a mass of these subatomic particles that are vibrating or have an electrical charge, which means we're ionic. Electrical atom means it's an ion. So we're ionic. So we exchange this information ionically with each other. And so it's all a big frequency game. And that's really what I attribute these whole senses to. It's picking up on the right frequencies. Whether you're clairsentient, voyant, or audient, all of them are equally capable to get onto these super highways of information that we term meridians. We have meridians in our body. We have meridians on the earth. We have meridians off the earth. So each of them hold different levels of consciousness or different levels of what I would call information. And this information is varied that you can tap into. So it's how we seem to, my intuition's just telling me, the map says to turn left, but I'm kind of thinking I'm supposed to turn right. This just doesn't seem right, and boom, there you go. And your intuition is telling you, yep, turn. So we can tap into these meridians. Now, that's how I attribute the human body. I know people look at it different, and you can even go out that the human body has that of the ethereal body, where we have many layers of information, our emotional layer, all of this good stuff. And then we tap into each other. Like, I live in Colorado, a group of aspen trees that we're all connected to the mother tree. An aspen forest has a mother tree, and there's one host. And that's how I look at this higher powers, that we're all interconnected and all interrooted in each other and able to use these roots or these meridians to create information and gather information.
Ah, okay. And that makes sense to me. I mean, it might be higher. It's kind of hard to understand these at first. Actually, when I was reading some of them, I was kind of like, I have to read it again and read it again to kind of get more of an understanding. But you do this all the time as compared to those of us who are lay people just kind of taking in some of this energy. I know that one of your titles, of course, which you're endowed with, is being an energy practitioner. Now, the actual definition, that, as I see here, is one who uses various techniques to clear blocked energy, impact the flow of energy, and balance the energy of the aura. Now, I have two different questions. First off, what was your motivation behind utilizing being an energy practitioner or utilizing that form? And then secondly, maybe you could elaborate on, are there things such as techniques or methods that you use as an energy practitioner? I guess I'm curious about that as well.
Oh, sure, Cindy. So, being a corporate executive with a Fortune 100, and I had done some leadership training. And during this leadership training, I was introduced to neuro-linguistics programming. It's called NLP. And when I first learned NLP, which is basically how our thoughts, our words create that of the outcome. Again, all to this, what I would call frequency lesson. How do our thoughts create? Now, many people have read the book The Secret. There's many great, Esther and Jerry Hicks, all the books on the law of attraction. These laws of creation work off of our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So as I learned NLP, neuro-linguistics programming, I sat back and I said, why isn't this in Western medicine? And is it more in Western medicine? I've just missed it because I've been in the hospital system or medicine for 25 years now, and I've never heard of NLP. So that started my journey, Cindy, to answer your question, was really looking at how our brains create this neurochemical exchange in our bodies to heal us or hurt us, to create disease process or to create healing. When we cut ourselves, Let's say, and most of us have normal coagulation factors, meaning we can clot. We don't say to the body, okay, body, now it's time to start clotting. It's time to send in the white blood cells. It's time to send in the hemoglobin. No, our body just knows how to heal. So as I learned NLP and thought about this, I thought, how is this to heart disease, to these chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease? 1 in 2 people right now in their lifetime will have a cancer. Now, all cancers are not deadly, many are curable, but when I saw that statistic from the World Health Organization, I went, wow. And we all know, it's been very proven through science, that cancers are very emotional diseases. So how do these emotions in the body show up, get stuck? How do they work with us? How do they work against us? And there's not really against us. It's just, what does our body do to keep a state of homeostasis? What I know is our body is there to protect us. It's there to heal us. It's there to keep a state of homeostasis. So often the body will create these mutations to almost encapsulate this frequency exchange that's out of place. So what do I mean? When people get a cancer or heart disease, what we'll see is a change to the cellular activity in that area. It's diabetes. I can go on and on. Asthma, any disease process that you have, what we see is cellular change. Sometimes it's a mutation. Sometimes it's an augmentation. So as I was studying this, I said, okay, well, how do our thoughts, our words, start to create these changes? So I went on to study the human body inside of neurolinguistics programming, and through that process I became a hypnotherapist, a theta healer, and I'll talk about theta healing a little bit. I do quantum touch, I do touchless quantum healing, and I also do Psych K, a whole host, anything that I can get my hands on, I get certified and I learn how to do, because different things and different techniques work with different people. So, but what I found is all of them are interrelated and a lot the same, is that we have this ability to self-heal. We do it every day. So how do we activate our minds to assist us, as they're part of our body, to heal? And that started my journey. But yeah, I have many accreditations, licenses, all this good stuff, because how I look at this, Cindy, is I can't learn enough about this. We're in the realm of neuroscience right now, of how our brains, our conscious and unconscious brains, affect that of our being. We have this whole natural pharmacy in our body. So how do we work with our minds to create healing and release these neurohormones or chemicals we talk about in our natural pharmacy? And that's what I do in private practice with people.
Gotcha. And well put, I might add, actually. That makes sense to me. And not that I'm the most intelligent person in the world, but I'm following you. So I'm kind of like, I'm trying to take it in bits and pieces, It's like, yeah. What did she say? Really? I'm getting, I'm feeling you. Now, to further extend out, obviously you are also considered a medical intuitive, which obviously differs from something such as a psychic medium or an energy practitioner. And ironically, you happen to have all 3 of these accomplishments, which I find just amazing that you can do, like, even half of the things that you can do. When did you discover that you had this medical intuition, or is this something that you actually delved into? I guess I'm just trying to figure that out in my head. Is this something that just comes to you and you realize it, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's interesting. Medicine's been my whole background, my whole life. It's really, I wanted to be a vet as a kid because I love animals so much. And much of what I'm referring to, I work with animals as well. That, as I dove into the NLP, Cindy, what I started to discover is the transference of those thought process or that skill and those techniques to medicine, into Western medicine, as I described. So as I started to look at the body and work through that, what I saw is displaced frequency or displaced energy. So when I look at a human body, I basically have learned techniques through theta healing, through NLP, through hypnotherapy, through being an RN, where I look at the body and I see the displaced frequencies. And then what I know is that thought process or these energy cycles reside all over the body. Now, we think of them in the brain, and that's a great place because really our pineal gland, which is in the third brain in the very center of our brain, is called the master gland. And everything gets activated from this master gland. But we have a lot of energy pieces in and around our bodies. So as I look at bodies, I can see cancers, I can see this displaced energy in and around bodies that typically it takes years to build up, and then all of a sudden we have a major disease. So often these frequencies will start to build up, and often built around emotion. And then over years of period of time, some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, they turn into a disease process. So this was just something that, as I'm working on my skills as, both a psychic medium and as a psychic, I said, well, I can see this disease process on bodies and how it's interlinked into the emotional process. What I've found, Cindy, is it's very, very rare. In fact, I have yet to determine where somebody had some type of a disease or frequency without some type of an emotional element to it. Now, saying that, sometimes it's a very simple emotional element. Most of the time, it's not.
Meaning, okay, now you lost me there for a second.
Yeah.
I guess how do you determine that? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
the severity.
Psychologists call these belief systems. So, when we're from in utero really to about age 6, the majority of our belief systems, and it doesn't have any religious aspect to it, but it could, these belief systems are really defined as these fixed thoughts that we take and basically cement them, and they're really more thoughts, philosophies, cement them into our being. So as a kid, I took in a belief system, if I work hard, I'll succeed. Now, that took me a long way. Until I was about 48, I had gained too much weight because I was working 80 to 100-hour work weeks. I was exhausted because I couldn't go home at night to my family because I felt if I didn't work hard or these 80 to 100-hour work weeks, I wouldn't be successful. So it was interesting. It built my career. It did a lot of good for me. But after a while, I said, So that's what I started to learn, the thought process of NLP, that we can actually re-imprint or change or delete these or add to these belief systems. So they're based on what modern psychology would be called our unconscious brain, where we've taken these belief systems, we automatically have physiologic responses or neurochemical responses, and we link emotion to it. Well, what I know is these emotions, this frequency is stored all over the body. Often when I'm working with cancers like breast cancer, I'll find that often it has a lot to do with love. It has a lot to do with loss. It has to do with children. I'll start linking a lot in that region. And so as a psychic medium, I can get down to the crux of it, work to unlink energetically, Cindy, if this makes sense, the emotional ties that are keeping people there. In fact, I just worked with a cancer patient who continues to get cancer. I think she's on round 4 of having her cancer back. And what we're doing is unlinking the emotional attachment to the cancer. Does that make sense?
In a small way, for not having gone through this experience, I can only empathize or get to a certain point as it relates, but I get where you're going. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, it makes a little more sense to me now. I want to ask this question just because obviously being a medical intuitive, and then you have the psychic medium side, then you have the energy practitioner. In your own personal opinion, do you favor one as compared to the other? Do you enjoy these various techniques or whatever the proper word would be, for lack of a better term. Which do you prefer practicing most? Is there one that you prefer?
Oh, that's interesting. Gosh, Cindy, it's interesting. I work with this higher power, this source, many call God, creator, Allah, divine, universe. However, whatever your vibration is, your term is, I'm comfortable. My term is God. That works for me. For some people, God is something different to them, so I'm okay with that. But as I work, what I say to people, it's one thing to know things about it, and it's probably why I worked in surgery my whole life. Because I'm one of those, if you don't like it, let's change it. Now, it doesn't need to be a physical wound when we do this. It can be brilliant. So I love to mix all of the skills that I have, but energy work as a psychic medium, and really my energy work is done so well because I am psychic. A lot of times you can throw spaghetti against the wall as an energy practitioner. I'm fortunate not to have to do that. Pretty much I'm led directly to the source of the issue so that I can get there. Now, saying that, there's nothing bad about energy practitioners who don't have that background. So I want to make sure. I believe that all energy practitioners are led by their intuition. But it's what allows me to get to the crux of some of these belief systems, because they're very much built on energy, and some of them have exact vibration or wording to them. So as a clairaudient, it helps me do that. Now, so I say that, but people come to see me all the time to just work as a medium, which is very healing for loved ones. I'm often sought out to, I just did a session with two cousins who just met up with each other because one is Scottish and one is American, and their grandmas were sisters and they're trying to learn the history. So I channeled both of their grandmas, and we had a ball when we did that. So whatever's healing for the person, I guess, is where I tend to enjoy. If it's healing for you, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, this has to be one of my more exciting questions to ask, because I really want to know the answer to this. Again, many of the listening audience find the concept of interaction, of course, amongst the deceased both fascinating and puzzling, obviously. There's two facts that I know about you. It's been said that you've transcended over 300 levels of consciousness and carried out conversations with up to 18 beings, if I got that correct. I wanted to ask a couple different questions relative to that.
Sure.
First off, and I know this is a hard question to answer in terms of when we talk about things like time frame as far as these experiences, because when you talk about having 300 levels of consciousness in these conversations with beings, I'm assuming this has happened over a course of years or things like that, or maybe just give us a timeline. I'm just curious in terms of start, finish, is it finished, that sort of thing. This is all kind of hard to understand.
Yeah. And, a lot of people say, hey, what are levels of consciousness? Like, How would you know that? Mm-hmm. This whole, what I'll call the ethereal body, meaning that we have our physical body, and then we know that we radiate energy out, which people call your electromagnetic field, and then off of our electromagnetic field, we shine an aura. So within that electromagnetic field are these, what we termed meridians. And these meridians lead you to different levels of consciousness that you'll have different information. So now saying that, how does that help me? As I was learning to become more of a clairaudient, and honestly why I did this, Cindy, it was very selfish. I was writing a medical patent. I have a medical patent in the patent office for a device I've designed, and I really needed to hear a lot of detail because I was talking physics, and I am not a physics major, and I thought, oh my gosh, if I'm to bring this to the world, I need help. So I started to access many beings, inclusive of Albert Einstein. You name it, I sought after them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to go to the top, right? So I started to access information, and as I was given information, there are things that I now know that I think, okay, I have no idea how I know that, but I do. So it became helpful for me to work with multiple people on this other side that we call, and in these altered realms of consciousness. So I sought out masters around the world to assist me because I thought, wow, it's like terrain in California and you have no roadmap. It's like, wow, I have no idea where I'm, at least in Colorado, we have the mountains. If you go west, you're heading towards the mountains. There's nothing. Or, I used to live in Kansas, and I always said, I think Christopher Columbus, could have lived in Kansas because it just makes the world look flat sometimes. So as I was training this, I sought out a lot of masters around the world, and they assisted me. But now, in fact, I was doing some things, and all of my grandparents were with me, and they're talking, and my great-grandparents, and we're chatting about our family. And so, after a while it becomes norm for me, but I remember when it wasn't. And for those of you that are starting out there, start very simple. Start with one being. I would call them your main guide. Some people call them guardian angels, but these are your life guides. And speak with them only. Get very, very clear. Just like Cindy, I would hear your voice or you would hear mine. Vibration or frequency will sound like a voice. Get to know that voice and then work with somebody to clarify who it is. So it took me a while to really, you're asking me how many years, gosh, probably my whole life, to really hear very clearly what voice or vibration, quote unquote, I was hearing. Now, I'm a clairaudient. Many people are not clairaudients. They're clairvoyants. So they'll see things. People who have deja vu every day. I know these kind of people. In fact, they walk into my practice all the time, and I'll tell them this, and they say, how do you know that? I say, well, I'm psychic. That's what you're paying me for. But listen, clairvoyant, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You get to see a lot of detail. You see things. People are clairsentient. I'm being told, Cindy, you're very clairsentient, that you'll walk into a room and you'll just know something about someone. Now, clairsentients tell me this is the hardest thing. They doubt themselves the most. And I say, listen, the whole animal kingdom works off of being a clairsentient. They literally move, graze, and stay alive by being a clairsentient. It's one of the most accurate, fastest ways to be a psychic. The toughest thing is people say, I don't trust myself. I don't trust my knowing. So that's where I went through a whole course of testing my knowing, saying, oh, I think this, but I'm going to test myself. Am I right? It was like a Jeopardy game. I can shout out the answer before the answer comes. So a lot of this is trusting your knowing. And when you have a lot of, let's say, attachment to the answer, slow down. Now, what do I mean? The best psychic mediums, clairvoyants, clairaudience, clairsentients are very neutral. You come from a place of being neutral. You don't have a lot of attachment to what the answer should be. So when something's very emotionally charged for me, I tend to take myself out of that game. Because what I know is that my filters or my belief systems are going to affect the outcome. There isn't any psychic medium on the face of the planet anywhere who would tell you any different, who's any good. So what the best psychic mediums will really be unattached to the answer, meaning I'm always surprised at some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth because I have no attachment to what it should look like. Does that make sense? Yeah, and that's why I say when people are starting out and doing this, have no attachment to the answer. Allow it to come.
Gotcha. Now, these beings that you were referring to or speaking to, are these all when we talk about beings, now you remember someone like myself is literally, being after being after being. Are these individuals that you're always familiar with, or are these individuals that you've never seen, never had any acknowledgement or affiliation with in the past?
Yeah, I tend to work with this higher power that people call God, Allah, divine. So I do that because I can access more levels of consciousness that way. Other psychic mediums will have a specific guide, someone. Now, will I work with these beings called archangels? Absolutely. However, I allow this higher power to orient me towards the best source of information, and that way I know it's a very pure, clear source of information. I'm known for my accuracy. When it's been measured, I'm 98, 99% accurate, and I do that and slow down because there's a lot of opinion. Now, it's funny, Cindy, because that's what I was told a lot of our conversation would be on, and this whole opinion, open to dispute. We all have our opinions, and as people cross over, they are themselves, and it's the biggest, relief and, I guess fear to some people as they cross over. They say, "Oh, I'm still me." And I'll say, "Yep, you're still you."
Okay.
Guess what? All of those things that you were dealing on Earth, you're still dealing with when you cross over. Now, depending on the level of consciousness that you're on, your view could be different. You get to see, hear, and feel things. Sometimes not. So when you cross over, and like I was speaking with my grandma this morning, we spend time together and have coffee together, and she was very dear to me on the earth, and she's still my grandma. She still has her opinions. Oh, and she's giving me the evil eye, Cindy. I got to be careful. She's pretty dear to me. But, I respect her opinions. I honor her thought process. I'm okay with that. It's just when you're accessing these different beings, you want to know where this information is coming from. When I give information from this higher power, often, it's from someone looking through an all-glass house, meaning the floor and the ceiling is glass, versus my house or another being's house that may have 3 windows. It's a very different view. So when you're working with a psychic medium, always ask them who they utilize as the reference, what plane of existence they're working from. It's all very, very good. There's no right or wrong to it. You just want to know how these beings, these people on Earth are accessing information. And then see what feels comfortable for you. Use your own intuition to pick a psychic medium if that's somebody you're working with.
Certainly. Now, do you find that with these particular beings and whoever it is that you're accessing and when you're spending time with them, et cetera, I'm assuming, and again, this might be what we're all used to in terms of talking about psychic mediums and what we've heard, that sometimes we're told messages get delivered or they get transferred from one person to another person. Are there ever any given points in times where you have, had to be the bearer of a bad news or know things that you probably don't want to know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to say a lot, Cindy, is
Sure.
What I've done is take out a lot of my belief systems of what's right, wrong, good, and bad. If I'm told to deliver information, I do. I always ask, as I know a lot about a lot of people, a lot about thoughts, things like that. And, I'll say, Cindy, I'm sure I'm like most psychic mediums that I give privacy. I give what I like to have, so I give a lot of privacy to people. I think, the best thing that a psychic medium can have is forgiveness. And sometimes you'll hear thoughts that aren't kind. You'll hear actions that people do to one another, to other family members that, we would not want out in public. And sometimes things that just make me cry. I think, why do we treat each other like this? Our warped sense of love. But often I've had people who say, I feel like I'm going to transcend. I feel like I'm going to leave the earth. And, I have to look at them and say, that's what I'm being told. You are. And normally we'll be given, anywhere from a 2-week to 3-week, I don't want to say a forewarning, just the sense that it's time to clean things up. It's time to reconcile with each other. And if you get that, listen. Now, saying that, many beings have this well before they get into an accident, and they think, gosh, I don't know why something's going to happen. If you're sensing something's going to happen to you, listen. If you're sensing that, boy, something's going to happen to a loved one, listen. Because often you're given messages to give to someone else that I just feel like something's going to happen to your car. I want you to check your tires. Good, because we do have these exit plans that we can leave the earth a little earlier than we should because we're not listening. Well, we serve in each other's lives that way too. Maybe somebody has a lot going on at work, they're not listening to their inner knowing, and you're hearing for them to do something. Tell them. But yeah, I get a lot of information, and I always ask, and sometimes it's with total strangers, and I ask. Now, the good thing is I get to be the bearer of good news, too.
Oh, my goodness gracious, look at that.
Yeah, but normally I use a lot of discretion, and that's how I'm led, is I'm not told to say anything that wouldn't be of what I would call the best and highest good, of good benefit for that person. And I double check, but I always ask, and I know with the source of information that I'm given that it would be a very positive thing for that person to know it. But sometimes it's, boy, really? I'm supposed to tell them that? Yep, you are. So, but I look for the kindness and the goodness in people, and that's what I find. So, yeah, the indiscretions, things like that, no, I see it, I hear it, but it's not something I typically am told to share.
Sure.
However, yesterday as I was voting, as I was going through every candidate, I was asking some pretty personal questions because I want to know who's leading, our country. I want to know who's on our judicial system. I want to know who's being honest with my tax dollars. So, I ask that kind of stuff. Use your intuition that way. It's okay.
Oh, boy. My goodness.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious because obviously I guess in my own mindset I'm thinking to myself, were there instances with these particular beings, or I would almost refer to a spirit or a consciousness, if you will. Have you ever felt frightened or threatened or not comfortable?
Yeah. I have, and that's what I've learned, Cindy, to work through. There are consciousnesses that are unkind. There are beings who've crossed over who are unkind. I have refused to channel beings because I channel every vibration. I've looked at some people and said, why in the world would you want to connect with them? They're darn right cruel. They were cruel on the earth. They're cruel still. Truly, do you really want to hear what they have to say? They're manipulative energy. So when I do that, I will forewarn people, and I have refused to do that because I've said, they just shouldn't get a voice. Honestly, this isn't important. Now, I have done things for people who needed to heal, with parents, with things, with some very, very evil beings on the earth. I mean, I would just look at them as evil. They were unkind, molesting their children, doing things. But there's some type of a reconciliation energetically or karmically that we need. So I'll often do that. I don't need to do it channeling, but I often do that for people on the earth who need that reconciliation. It's important. But, yeah, there are beings, energy out there that isn't for your best and highest good. And I do have some people who will tell me that this energy protects them, and I'll say, it doesn't do any sense of protection. It's a false sense of protection. So often people will come to me and say, boy, I felt this big energy that was negative following me my whole life. And I'll tell them, yeah, you do. So, what I do is help them to break agreement with these beings because we're energetically attached to these beings in some way. We're a bunch of magnets. We attract energetically or we repel. So when we can break some of these agreements, or what I just call contracts between each other, people call it karma or karmic energy, then all of a sudden when you neutralize the energy. Now, that's why some authors like Deepak Chopra, wonderful author, speaker, Wayne Dyer, accept the parts of yourself you don't like, these energies that you don't like, because what you do is disable this energy or this attraction to them. When you're one half of that magnet, when you can make peace in your being energetically and neutralize that electromagnetic charge to these beings, there is none. So that's why making peace with these negative parts of you, why are you attracting this being of what many people call darkness or of a negative vibration? Good. Look inside of yourself, look in the mirror, and disable that. And that's what I help people do, but you can do it on your own. Many people do that every day.
That's an interesting way to put it. You're actually talking about something I'm about to do. How strange. How very odd. Very, actually.
Such a coincidence, right, Cindy?
This is freaking me out a lot, actually, because that literally was just, that was like taking out of my mouth. That was something I was supposed to have done on Sunday, and it's forthcoming, actually. And so how very strange is that? My goodness.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask a question. That kind of threw me for a loop there. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask if having what I would consider, I guess, to be altered consciousness, if you will, have you ever found it to be, or I should say, have you always considered it a gift? Has it somewhat at times been a curse for you? Have you ever looked back and thought to myself, God, if I could just change things, maybe perhaps this is not the life I would have wanted from this standpoint?
Yeah. Gosh, Cindy, I've always considered it a gift, and, we come onto the earth, from the spirit form. We make all these agreements in spirit form, and what I mean by agreements is we all came to the earth for a purpose, for a reason, and we're all interconnected, and we all chose to be here together. So as I came with this gift, at times I've wished, gosh, I wish I wasn't so sensitive. I wish I didn't know that about that person. I wish I wasn't right about that person. I really want them to be something else. And as soon as I got comfortable with just allowing things to be as they are, I stopped wishing things were different. What I now see is the beauty in the world in each person. I really look for the best in each person. Even Charles Manson, Adolf Hitler. It's tough to find the good in someone like that at times when you see the acts that they do to other individuals. There's good in there. They were created that way. These blocks, how do you remove the blocks? Well, they have to. We have free will. And many people don't want to remove their blocks. Okay, I can still see the beauty in you. I know where you came from. So that's really how I live my life. I rarely have a stressful day anymore, but I still have my moments. We so want to be accepted and loved by other beings. So where I have to come from now is I just am. I just am. I'm accepted and loved by all. Now, they may not like what I do, what I say, what I wear, how I look, how I speak, what I say. They may disagree, but I know I'm accepted and loved, and that's a very different come from than I had in my younger years, and I find it a very peaceful place to live. I just know we all chose to be here. Now, are we awakening to that? Many are. Some people say, I don't know all about that hogwash, Michelle. My family, Cindy, as I came out at about, 47, 48 years old, to my family to tell them that I'm psychic and a medium, they all looked at me and said, you are not.
Really?
What are you talking about? And they all trust and believe me, but they looked at me like, what are you talking about? I didn't grow up in a family that spoke of this, believed in anything related to it. I grew up as a Methodist girl, going to church, playing in the bell choir, and I still am. You know, I still am that person. So whether you're, grew up Buddhist, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, I mean, whatever your Christian, whatever your thought process is in your acknowledgement to this higher power or not, you're still you. And you came as a fully equipped car. You're fully loaded. What this higher source I call God tells me is we're perfect, whole, and complete. And when you can really, really, really understand what that looks like in truly divine terms versus man's terms, it's freedom. And that's what I sought my whole life, was this sense of freedom, whether it was from mind, body, spirit, freedom. And what I found as freedom is just that place to say, I'm loved. I'm loved by everybody. And what does love mean? It's a state of being. It just is. You can't get outside of love. Now, that seems hard when we commit these crimes to each other, when we hurt each other, when we do this. It's the absence of love. People have forgotten what it feels like to vibrate to love. It's not an act we do. It's a natural state of being. So when people awaken to that, they find peace. They find harmony. All of a sudden, cancers go away. All of a sudden, wounds heal. All of a sudden, my heart disease is gone. It's amazing when I work with patients. And I've seen stage 4 cancers with black tumors coming out of bodies where people have healed. I've seen everything that horrified me as a Western medicine practitioner going, oh my gosh, listen, higher power, you have given me something far beyond what I can imagine healing in my human mind. But what I know, if it's to be, it will. And we have these opportunities within ourselves to awaken. So, yeah, now, do I fight anything? No, not at all. And when people say, hey, I just don't believe in that, and I have people who've crossed over, who their loved ones will come to me and say, channel my grandmother, and maybe they were very faithful in their religion. They didn't believe in a psychic medium. And so I'll have beings, who've crossed over, maybe like Mother Teresa or, Jesus of Nazareth or Buddha, to work with them to say, it's safe. She's safe. So it's very interesting, even those who've crossed over at times have a tough time saying, is this possible? I know it is, and I know that the human body, mind, and soul can integrate to a place of harmony if that's what you desire. But it starts with you. It starts with your thought process.
Oh, certainly, and that's interesting. It was just kind of leading up to the next question I was going to pose to you. How would you address, like, for instance, I was born and raised Catholic, so, of course, in our religious faith, we're raised with this belief that basically psychic ability is nothing but mere conjecture. I mean, obviously, of course, we don't necessarily believe that there is such a thing as a psychic medium or that, people can see the future, et cetera.
Right.
What would you say to somebody like that clearly consciously is like, no, this hogwash, 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 hogwash? I mean, can they find a sense of belief in that? I mean, if that's what your life is all it's been, so to speak.
Yeah. I tell people it's your journey. You have to see what makes sense to you. What is your belief system? It's yours. It's yours to own. It's yours to honor. It's yours to cherish. What makes sense to you is for you. Now, I work with Mother Teresa every day. She's one of my main guides. I love her. I'm not a Catholic girl. She laughs at me. She tells me to do Hail Marys, and I said, I don't even know how to do that. Although I do have my grandma's rosary beads from years ago. But what I say to people is, you have to choose your destiny, your path, your knowing. It's okay not to believe in that. I love people who are skeptics. I'm in Western medicine. I'm an evidence-based medicine girl. Show me is a lot of my mantra. And what I say to people is, would you like me to say something? If they say, no, it scares me, I say, okay. That's okay. Now, when I work with people, I always ask this higher power to show people signs. People will get signs up and down. So if you're working with a psychic medium, often I tell people these things of the future. And when I talk about the future, people say, well, gosh, how would I know if that's true or not? Well, there's lots of possibilities that can come up in the future. It really has to do with what you desire. But often you'll know, see, feel, or hear these signs from this higher source, this higher power. And things will just show up, you know? And so what I say to people is really trust your knowing, and you're on your own journey. Some people leave the earth and never believe in this. I have family members like that, and that's okay. So what I would say is it's your journey. You choose.
Oh, certainly. Definitely. And I was curious to ask, now this is just a funny question because, you know, I have to ask this because we all obviously just lived through Halloween. I'm here to tell you, I can only imagine what's running through your house on Halloween. Is that like madness, chaos? I'm a huge Marilyn Monroe fan, so I'm like thinking, okay, can we do like an incarnation or something? Can we resurrect her? Can we like get her little being to come in here? Because I'm like, oh my God, Michelle's probably got the cornerstone on that, right? Because I know that all these beings are visiting you on Halloween night, right? Because that's the thing, isn't it? That's like the big thing.
I know.
Or am I just like nuts about this and thinking
that is so funny. Yeah, she loves your soul. That's so funny. You know, I quarantine my energy, but you know, Bela Lugosi, I was on an interview on Fox News, and I was working with Vincent Price. And Vincent, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. I didn't know him on the earth, but I do now. And so he said, hey, let's get Bela Lugosi, who was the original Dracula. And I went, I don't know. I'm not very much of a scary movie kind of gal. So I started to channel with Bela Lugosi. He's just a delightful, delightful Hungarian, actor and man and soul. And, you know, Michael Jackson, I didn't know him, and I liked his music, but I really enjoy him as he's transcended. So I work with him. But it's, interesting. I tend to not pick my favorites, but those vibrations. It's like on the earth, how you just naturally enjoy some souls. And so, yeah, but I don't tend to open up the heavens, quote unquote, or the consciousness saying, everybody come on in. But yeah, I was at a historical landmark here on Halloween and channeled some of the beings that were in it. It's a restaurant called the Melting Pot that has been a jail, and it's 100 years old. And so as I was on radio as I worked with some of the beings that were there. It was interesting because they're as curious about us as we are about them. Some just choose to stay on the earth. It's known that many Native Americans, as they cross over, they choose to stay on Mother Earth to protect Mother Earth. So there are beings who walk on the earth and choose to stay here, and they have their stories to tell, and sometimes they all reside together, and some get caught between the grid, and I won't go into details about that, but sooner or later they transcend. So there's always a story to tell in many, many friendly beings. And I guess, Cindy, that's what I want to tell people. The universe out there, as I work with many, many beings inside and outside this universe, is very friendly. Earth is very loved. And without getting into a lot of detail on that, the beings on Earth are loving beings. Often they're there to help you. If they reside in your house, many people say, oh, get them out of the house. Sometimes they can do a lot of good. I'm going to do an event tonight with a physician, and she has a being that was a farmer, and he actually helps do the accounting. And the gals are like, our papers are moved all the time, Michelle. I said, yeah, he's trying to help you. He's a past accountant. Well, now they talk to him, they laugh, and they say, oh, he's helping us. And I said, yeah, once you acknowledge these beings around you in friendliness, they often can help you, and they're trying to work with you. But it's a very friendly place out there. And if I say anything to people that you take home or take from this, is that you are loved. The beings across are loving. If you feel a being that isn't loving, tell them to go away. It's just like on Earth. Hey, go away. I don't want your energy. It doesn't feel good to me. Go away. You have that much power. You're that powerful of a being.
Oh, my goodness. And then in the future, we know now that we've had this talk, so if you ever see this Marilyn Monroe being kind of around, you just send her over here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been waiting, patiently waiting. She just never shows up. I don't know what it is. I'm so fascinated, but she never comes to visit. I don't know why. Must be I don't know. I've been waiting though. I just cannot say enough. My friends would tell you that I am in a whirlwind of awe and amazement, and I'm sure there's thousands of us that are, but that's just my girl. That's one of those things.
That's wonderful.
You do tend to touch on that, I think, too, sometimes, that a lot of times there's just those beings that to you are just surreal. She just happens to be mine. I can relate to her. I can connect to her, and I obviously will never meet her, but it's just, she's amazing.
And that's that ionic transfer. We just know each other. Even when people have crossed over, I just have this affiliation to you. There's something about you very special that I'm to learn about me from you, and that's fantastic. That is fantastic. So, and often it's not the apparent, and that's what I'm hearing about you from Marilyn, where we think, oh, what's the apparent? This Marilyn Monroe, although she was this icon, she was this person. She was this sweet, sensitive person, a person of introspect is what I'm hearing, someone who really looked at the world and people in these interactions. So it's often when we get into their biographies that we say, oh, now I get it.
Sure.
It's that transference of energy is there for us. It's why we have that affiliation. Yeah.
Definitely. And now I was curious because I don't know that I know this or not. Now, in terms of the various different clients that you've had or the clientele in the past, have you been able to treat or work with Hollywood types or celebrity types in the past, or anybody that you can actually talk about with us?
I have. I work with world-class musicians who, people would know the names who they play with. I work with Fortune 100 CEOs. I tend to keep more, I'm a Western medicine girl, so I keep HIPAA. I call it SPIPA.
Right.
I kind of keep that spiritual, Privacy Act. But, what I find is that people who are successful use these intuitive senses every day. It's what we master, we, ask for on the earth, and they're some of the best. So as I'm working with them, oftentimes they'll come into me and say, I get this part of it, but I don't get this part of it. Help me do that. Or, I'll take them to the next levels that they don't even think are possible. Often they just want to, speak with a mentor, something like that. But yeah, absolutely. We know that presidents of the United States have used psychic mediums. Now, how you work with a psychic medium, what that looks like, a very renowned, who I really think kind of created a lot of medical intuition, Carolyn Miss, author, speaker, phenomenal. This whole aspect to medical intuitives. I work with some physicians who tell me someday they see medical intuitives being in a hospital. And I think that would be fantastic as we awaken to this whole aspect to we're all intuitive. Each of us has a different gift. And it starts with desire. Do you desire to not only fine-tune but open up these intuitive gifts? Can you remove the fear? You'll find that kids are some of the most intuitive on the planet because they don't have fear. They don't have these preconceived ideas that there's anything fearful about it. So it's very, very interesting how they'll often play with their imaginary friends. Often what I'll say is you see your guardian angels, these guides around you, and they'll say, yeah, what's wrong with that? And I say, nothing. And they're friendly. Now, when kids start playing with imaginary friends that are unfriendly, that's when I'll say, that's probably not such a good friendship. They're not telling you kind things. Okay, great. We'll stop that. It's just like a bully at school. They're bullies who've crossed over. Okay, let's stop that, and it's that quick.
Gotcha. Now, I've got two more questions for you, and then I will let you off the hook because you've been such a gracious host, and I've enjoyed this so very much, I have to say. And just on a side note, we'll leave that question for last. I wanted to take a minute just to basically toot your horn. Michelle is certified in NLP, Psych-K, advanced hypnotherapy, advanced theta healing, and post-life regression therapy. Wow, that's a lot. It would seem to me is that there's absolutely nothing that you don't excel at, and it's amazing to me. And you've also been a 26-time award winner. Is that correct? Marketing and sales rep for cardiac equipment.
Yeah, cardiac rhythm management. Yep. Yep. I was a director of sales with the team, but yeah. So, whatever your intuition is, many people don't want to come out in the open with it. Use it to your benefit, to your glory here on earth. Enjoy that. That's a word we don't use very often, glory. And I love words because they're vibration and they have very clear intent. But this glorify yourself. Well, we think, oh, I can't glorify myself. My gosh, Michelle, that's very pompous. That's very arrogant. No, it really is for you to shine and to glorify yourself in your abilities. There's nothing unhumble about that. And the sense of being you or being authentic is what our intuitive senses allow us to have. But yeah, so I've taken sales teams, in Fortune 100s to a lot of success inclusive of me, because when people really are authentic and let go of the fear and really get into that thing that Eckhart Tolle calls the now, we produce a miraculous result, and we really have fun doing it.
Look at that. Now, with all of those listed accreditations that I was just talking about, is it your intention perhaps to maybe pursue or educate yourself further in the future, maybe just expand on getting more certifications? Is there anything else you want to add to your repertoire, or do you feel that you're satisfied at this point?
Oh, always. Perpetual student, and I learn from every day, and I have no problem telling my clients that, boy, I've learned so much from you today when you called me. I'm a perpetual student. So the world brings me that which I should learn, and I learn from every person, and oh my gosh, there's all kinds of things to learn. Let me start. I've got a list.
Probably about 8 miles long, right?
Yeah, I can't learn enough. I really can't learn enough, as I think we're in such an exciting time. And, I want to say this, Cindy, so many people are concerned or worried about these changes on the earth, things that are occurring right now. The sense of time, space, and matter is really excelling to a lot of people. For some people, it seems like it's standing still. We're coming up to December 20th, 2012. What's going to happen? Myself and many of my peers truly feel it's one of the most divine times to be on the earth. You really can create with these laws of creation faster and manifest faster, meaning create to manifest, faster than you ever have. Now, here's the good, and there's nothing other than good about it, is corral your thoughts. Really, really be clear on what you're thinking about as you're manifesting it, whether you know it or not. So start there. What am I thinking about? Back, whether you like Henry Ford or not, back in the 1930s, he said, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. Well, the thought process initiates or triggers things. And what we know is throughout the day, gosh, the guy who cut me off in traffic, the boss who didn't want to work with me, my kids who were just having a meltdown in the grocery store and everybody was staring at me and food is being thrown out of the cart, right? You name it, people go through. Right, crazy things. How do I control that thought? Is to ask for peace. Truly ask for what you desire. Really, really know it comes. It manifests. The laws are built on mathematical equations. There's nothing subjective about this. They truly are built on frequency mathematical equations. And we're at a time where you can manifest what I would call Eden in your life. This sense of joy, this sense of prosperity, of abundance, things that people think, oh gosh, Michelle, that's hogwash. Look at the economy. Look at the world. I know people who are manifesting things faster and more magnificent in their life than they've ever seen, especially relationships. We can manifest those. Whatever your heart's desire is that brings forth a very peaceful state of being, that of abundance, bring it forth. It's a great time to be on earth.
Wonderful. Okay, our final two questions. This one is a question that's personal to myself, and I'm pretty sure that others have probably questioned themselves about the same thing. In the course of this last year, very unexpectedly, I had found out that someone had crossed over who was very close to myself. And us as humans here on Earth, obviously, I think one of the things that's probably hardest for us is when there's never time to let them go or say goodbye.
Yeah.
And being in the position that you're in, obviously, you always know more per se than we do. So I guess how do we as individuals without clairvoyancy here come to grips with that, or is there a way to do so, or how do we let that go out of our lives?
Boy, Cindy, I can tell you, even with the gifts I've been given, it's not easy. There's just nothing easy about that. I'll tell you that energy doesn't die, that we as beings transcend, cross over. We're in different states of consciousness or states of what we would consider a physical being, that everything is heard, and to truly, manifest this energy back into your life. Think about these beings. Truly speak with them. They can hear you. So often they'll leave us pennies, pennies from heaven. Some people have dimes, quarters. A friend of mine, I told her that she was going to get a very strong message from her guide, and she found, Catholic medals in her bed that she doesn't even know where they come from, whose that were there. And she said, I made my bed that morning. How did they get there, Michelle? And I told her, listen, signs are given. Now, how do you prepare for someone to cross over? Boy, Cindy, I don't know. Can you imagine this higher power telling all of us the date that we are going to cross over? A lot of people will come to me and say, okay, how long am I going to live? Would we really want that? Would we truly want that?
No.
How I look at it is capture each day. Don't stop or wait to tell someone you love them.
Right.
And truly, truly live that mantra and enjoy. Have zero reasons to ever say, I should have. Now, that's something I awaken to. What's this whole shoulda thing? Right? And be at peace that everything is, magically and majestically orchestrated in the universes. If you're to say something to that being, it'll be said. Sometimes it's better heard when they've crossed over. Now that sounds odd, but it really is. They're in a different level of consciousness or state of being where they're actually listening and could hear it. If you're told to say something to somebody and you just feel like, oh my gosh, it's almost going to blurt out of my mouth, do it. If you feel like, oh, I should have, you'll get another chance. Do it. Trust me, you'll be told. It'll be so strong in your being that it'll just come forth. Don't worry. Relax. Know that everything is divine order and divine guidance. It just is. There's nothing that you need to do except for you be you and listen. Just listen to your inner knowing. You'll know. Nobody knows you better than you. True.
That's very true, actually. And that's very good, solid, very, very good, actually. That brings us to our last question. Now, I've been teeter-tottering about this question all day long. So this will be the last thing I'm going to ask you. Because typically, most of my guests don't have these abilities and they don't possess any of these qualities or skills, of course. And typically, I'm always the one who's asking questions all the time. So my very last question to Michelle is probably somewhat obvious, which is, is there just anything you can tell me about me? Just because I'm curious. I'm like, as long as you're on my show, the whole world's going to listen to it. I'm just wondering, are we seeing anything? And that's without precursing anything at all, because I obviously already know my own personal life. I'm just curious as to whether you have any answer for me.
Yeah. So, Cindy, we started out, this discussion with bipolar. What I'm hearing is you will live to see the day that the whole aspect to bipolar is no longer. that you will no longer be a bipolar victim or patient, and I'm going to use the word victim because often it's been debilitating. It won't be anymore for anybody, and that will be a victory. And believe it or not, you will help that realm of completion, and you chose to come to the earth with disease, and that's been innate to you. It's like, why did I choose this? That doesn't make sense. Now, saying that, what I'm hearing is you're pretty much cured now. You've rewired your brain and really feel that I'm almost to the place I could get off a medication and be completely healed, and you are. So this whole aspect to how we choose our paths, Cindy, you very much have chosen to not only be a survivor, but a thriver. And that's a very different thought process, that how I thrive on the earth and come out and tell people these cycles of, let's say, these neurochemical surges, these hormones that really, really change and affect our body. You had to dive big time into things of your past with your parents, is what I'm being told, as to how to neurochemically, in a sense, what we would think of as control these cycles. Now, saying that, Cindy, how accurate am I?
You're doing good.
Use your innate knowing, because I told you some things you're like, okay, hold it. I thought she was going to tell me my favorite color was orange or something.
Oh, you're getting to the heart of it here. Yeah, you're pretty on base here so far.
Okay, well, we could keep going, but you know what I like to say to people is this. We chose these paths of destiny, and often people will look at me and say, that just doesn't even make sense. Why the heck I would choose that on the earth, Michelle? And I say that all the time. I'll speak to this higher source, God, and say, are you sure I chose that? Like, I really, agreed to that? And, I laugh about it now, but what I know is it leads to the magnificence of our beings. And that, Cindy, is going to be a big, big thing. I keep hearing more books, and more books on this efficiency of the brain. Does that make sense? And how do we get this efficiency in the brain? And that's something that we're coming to know. The Yales and the Harvards, the Emorys, who are doing so much neuroscience are really looking at this. But there's still those of us who want to read a book from someone who's done it. And how did you do this in that of which, many would call a spiritual aspect, but truly my quest to become better, like for me. And that's what you're going to do, Cindy. I mean, it's very, very, very big. It's very cathartic for your soul.
My goodness gracious, look at that. Now, if only could bring me a husband, life would be in perfect order.
Well, that's interesting. He's out there, and he's read your books. I'm hearing 2. Now, you're not really asking for a husband. You're asking for a mate. So if you want a husband, you have to ask for a husband, Cindy, is what I'm hearing. Now, does that make sense for you?
Oh, well,
am I going to rat on you?
I have gone to him. There is a him. I have gone to him, and I've inferred and inferred and inferred and inferred and inferred and inferred. He's just not quite there yet. It's a tumultuous relationship. It's on again, off again, but I'm crazy about him. Absolutely mad about him.
And he's crazy about you. You've just given in to, is he going to be my husband? Now, hold your being. Here's the tough thing, and I'll end with this. Often we call forth a husband. If another being is not ready to be our husband, we'll call forth somebody else in our life. You've pretty much said to this gentleman, you're it. So sometimes it's not a matter of compromise, it's just a matter of changing our will, that I so don't want to lose you that I'm okay to make agreement with you in this sense. If you were to call forth a husband, another gentleman would come, is what I'm hearing.
Wow.
I don't want to say that out loud. And, really, that's choice. Here's what I hear is you have more of a committed relationship with this man than anything. There's just a few areas that really need to be addressed. Financial, they're telling me, is a huge one. How you spend, look at money, your thought process and beliefs of money, very, very different. And, you know, these are the things that make or break us on the human plane, things like that to work out. But, you know, compromise is not a bad thing as long as it doesn't compromise your values that of your foundation, what you're looking for.
I agree. Oh, my gosh. You guys have got to totally listen to Michelle because you've just completely freaked me out. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to tolerate the rest of this night right now. I'm so freaked out. I wanted to mention www.Michelle, and that's spelled Houchens. She can also be found on Facebook as well. I also know, and I can attest, that she does not only work with individuals but also businesses as well. Lastly, any future products, anything on the horizon, anything we can look forward to in the next year?
Yeah. You know, I'm just in the works of a reality TV show, believe it or not, to take these aspects, and we're in very early stages, so not something, you know, something you could see very soon, I hope, and that's what we're manifesting, but this whole aspect to taking some people, and how do you manifest that of what we call the vision of your life? So taking people from start, not necessarily to finish, because we're not finished till we leave the earth, but things that they'd like to manifest in showing and teaching people on an educational reality show of how this is done. Because, you know, we fall down, we trip. We get up, we go. You know, that's life. It's not a straight path, but yet all roads lead to the end. So that's something that I'm working on. You know, at some point I'm supposed to write a book. Cindy, you know, I'm going to try to take your lead here. I'm not much of a writer, but once I do it, I love it. So, yeah, but this whole aspect, so I hope to see everybody out. I'm not much of a TV watcher myself, but when I find a show that I learn things about, that's what I love, so that's what we're in the creation process of.
Oh, absolutely awesome. And I do want to extend to you, of course, an open invitation. I would love to have you come back anytime. I mean, you have been very insightful. You are a very intelligent, very, very adorable woman, actually. Go ahead, check her out on Facebook. Very knowledgeable and just amazing. I am amazed, completely amazed. And I definitely want to make sure I don't forget to thank Kevin. Thank you very much for setting up this interview. Thank you very much, by the way, Michelle, for being so patient. I'm sorry we had to reschedule your interview before. And certainly tonight I will go ahead and post up on Facebook and on my show page all the links to your information, Michelle, so people can get a hold of you. And like I said, don't be a stranger. I would love to have you come back anytime you'd like.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. And thanks to all the listeners, and namaste to everyone. And if you don't know, it's Sanskrit for bow eye to you, meaning bow eye to you, I see the light in you, and you are of me as I am of you. So thank you so much. And namaste, Cindy.
Oh, wonderful. You have a good evening tonight, and good luck with the event.
Thank you.
All right. You take care. Okay, folks, that was my very insightful interview this evening with Michelle. And again, it's Houchens, Houchens. I'm going to be posting that information up on my Blog Talk Radio page, in addition to which it will be on my Facebook page as well. Just wanted to throw two things out for you. If any of you are out and about in the Milwaukee area and you're looking for something neat and interesting to do, some of my good friends are going to be down at the Carolines Jazz Club down on South 2nd Street this evening, I believe, after 8:30 p.m. Just an open jam, lots of drums, lots of singing, just a lot of fellow musicians. Absolutely quaint, cute little bar. You might want to go ahead and check that out. In addition to which, I just wanted to say to everybody, I happened to notice this on Facebook today, so I just wanted to throw out this little comment before I let you go. Just as a precursor for next week Wednesday, we're going to be having the revisitation of the Real Housewives of Miami. Leah Black will be on Wednesday, and that's 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. But I'm going to leave you with just this one thought. I've been noticing throughout the day periodically that irregardless of the fact that obviously Election Day was yesterday, we all obviously know now who won. If you're friends of mine, you obviously already know my displeasure at the fact that President Obama is now officially the president for another 4 years. Irregardless of said fact, what I did just want to make a point to throw out to everybody is remember this. I've been noticing through the course of the day not only are my friends, but also now my family members are getting involved in going back and forth in this verbal abuse, if you will, in regards to talking about the presidential election. I guess what it comes down to is this. If you're anything like myself or anyone else, you have your own views, you have your own opinions. All that I ask is that you respect one another, be gracious to one another, be able to project your point of view without being insulting to each other. This is most certainly not worth losing your friends over. I've seen some people defriending each other, stop talking to each other, get an attitude with each other. It's all just bullshit, for lack of a better term. It's an election. It's over and done with. I realize we have to accept the repercussions of it, but that doesn't mean that you have to harm the people in your life or be rude or insulting. We have to learn to respect each other's opinion and understand that we're all different as it relates to politics and religion. So all I ask this evening is that you go ahead and be thoughtful and mindful of that. Otherwise, outside of that, I'm going to let you go for this evening. I hope you all enjoy your night, and I look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday. You take care.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. Bye, singing dog. Bye, goal.
I pronounce you.
Bye, wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really? Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.